right, so today we're going to hopefully conclude this teaching on what are you thinking. This is part 12. Part 12, what are you thinking? We've been looking at the mind and thinking of man and how it relates to authority. And I've got one more section to read on that that's small, and then I want to get into what do we need to think right, to think correctly. What's going to make the difference? Because we've been seeing that our thinking processes have not been very good. The default thinking, or the default way of thinking doesn't work very good. And so we're going to get some answers. But let's start in Ephesians chapter 2. Now, last time in part 11, we talked a lot about the idea of the flesh versus the spirit and our approach to the way the mind of the one and the mind of the other. The mind of Elohim versus the mind in man. And this is still going on here in Ephesians chapter 2. In verse 1, and you were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once lived in the lusts of our flesh, doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, as also the rest. So let's hold on to that right there. Okay, so it says here, we were dead. Now, we were dead, why? Because of the way we walked. Now, if we walked a certain way and that walk brought death, it's only reasonable to realize if we walked a different way, that walk brings life. So it's what we do that matters, okay? So it says here, we once walked according to what? The way the world walks. That's the way we walked. And that was according to the ruler of the authority of the air and of the nature or the spirit, the nature that is now working the sons of disobedience. In other words, it was Hasatan's adversarial nature and the fleshly human nature. We walked according to that. He said, this is because we were once living among that whole thing. We lived in our lusts of the flesh, which is a mindset, an approach, a way of doing things, a nature that we have, doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind. So the key idea here is doing the desires. Remember, we talked about this all through this teaching, right? How we think, our mindset eventually leads to what? Doing the desires. Because once we think about it, desire gets attached to it. And those cravings, those lusts, those desires that get attached to things manifest eventually in us doing the desire. But we're not doing a desire, we're doing a thought that has a desire attached to it. Because we now desire that thought to come into action. We want something. Okay? So it's not just doing a desire, but that desire is now pointed at a very specific object. It's linked to something, an action. Okay, so we're doing the desires of the flesh, that's the nature, and we were doing it of the mindset of that nature. And so we were, listen, it even uses that word, we were by nature children of wrath. We had no rest in us. We were angry. We were children that would also bring the wrath of Elohim, not being obedient, right? He says we were working as sons of disobedience. We were children who were disobedient. To be obedient, we have to embrace, as we talked about in Galatians, his nature. Okay? Because our nature, we read, is at enmity to his nature. And so when we're at enmity, we're of course going to be disobedient. We're not going to be obedient to what other natures are out there. We're going to be submissive only to what we want. So here we are. This is our condition. He says we were dead because of this condition. A wrong thought process with attached desires or fleshly, our human nature, and the enemy's nature's desire attached to it. And then the wrong actions or the wrong walk came out of it, and that walk led to death. And now he's going to tell us, but after all, in being immersed fully in that place, he says, but Elohim, who is rich in compassion, in verse 4, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were in that terrible place, dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Messiah. By favor, you've been saved. Okay, so now here we have this idea that we were in these trespasses, but in his great compassion, his great mercy, he chose to give us a choice. To open up our eyes and our ears and our hearts to receive the information that there's actually a choice. There's life and death. We didn't have a choice before. We were just going down a path that was headed straight to death. But now he's exposing and letting us know, guess what? There's a choice. So in his great compassion, he's shown us a different way. A way that leads to life, not a way that leads to death. And this is very, very important that we can see that there's that is a compassion of our Elohim. It's his compassion that he said, when you see your child doing something and we know what they're doing is going to hurt them, it's because we care and we love and we have compassion and we go over and we try to stop them and redirect them so that they don't hurt themselves. So in our Elohim's compassion, he's done the same for us. He's opened us up. Now, of course, we still then have to take our mind and change it. We still have to have our desires now linked to the new way of thinking. And then we have to do the desires of our different nature, not flesh, Elohim nature. Doing the desires of Elohim versus doing the desires of the flesh. Very important that we understand this. Okay? Now, let's take that thought and go forward now into Matthew 22. Okay, so we were going at this whole thing, looking at our mindset, looking at how we think, seeing about the natures, and then we realized our nature was just leading to death. We were on a straight path right into death. So what do we need to think right? Matthew 22 and verse 37. Matthew 22, 37. And Yeshua said to him, the person was talking, the person said in verse 36, teacher, what's the great command in the Torah? So really I should start in verse 36. I'll write that down in my notes here. We'll start over in 36. Okay? Yeshua said to him, you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. So it all begins with loving him, and because of our love for him, we choose to what? Change our mind. Change our mindset, our mind focus. This is a quote from Deuteronomy 6 and verse 5, so you don't have to turn there, but that was a quote there. After the Shema, it says, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim, etc., in exactly this way. With, by the way, all your heart, all your being, and with all your mind. So it's going to take a change of thinking, not just a change of heart, and not just coming out of your being. It's not something you could just desire. You have to think differently. You have to think differently. In other words, let's, for example, say you can think about, as an emotion, I'm lonely. And there's different things you can think of to fix that. Some of them are not real good choices. Some of them are very good choices. But how you think is going to determine if you end up in a good place to fix the emotional need called I'm lonely. So we're told here to love Yahweh. So some people think they're loving him doing all kinds of things they shouldn't be doing. So it's not just this emotional desire thing called loving our Creator, but how do you do that? You have to have the right mind to do it. It says in the verses that we've read in the past and that you're familiar with that there will be those that will do to you, to kill you, to turn you in, etc., thinking they're doing this to please their Elohim. So they had a desire to please him. I think every person in any religion has a desire to please their God, their Elohim. And so they do what they think will please. But of course, they often choose for themselves what will please. People that claim to be Messianic, Torah observant in Israel, yet when you see how they walk this out, they're sometimes, and sometimes all too often, choosing their own way of walking that's not exactly what he says. How they keep feasts, how they keep kosher, how they keep Shabbat, how they treat each other. It's not exactly what he talks about. But they claim that they're doing this because it's pleasing him. It's the way they focus on it. And so let's be careful and understand. He says that we are to love him with all of our beings, okay? And with all of our mind, all our strength, and everything we've got, our desire, our heart, but that mind part's going to determine if it's actually doing it in a way that he wants. Okay? Some of you have marriages. Some of you have been in marriages and are no longer in marriages. And you had a desire to please your spouse. But some of you found that you can't please your spouse doing it the way you think they should be pleased. You need to kind of figure out what pleases them. That's hard. That's hard because you're sitting there going, I don't know why you're not happy. I'm doing all this stuff to please you. And you're like, but I don't desire any of that. The stuff I desire, you're not doing. Well, why would you desire that? Total disconnect, right? Do you see how that could also work in the spiritual realm? You have to first seek to understand what is the desire. What does make him pleased and happy with you? To say things like, well done, you good and faithful servant. I'm pleased with you. You've done well. And so we have to figure that out by letting the one we're trying to please determine and tell us what pleases them. This is a hard mindset change. We're so used to thinking, well, if it's the works for me, if it's the way I think, then you should automatically feel it's perfect. How many of you found that that worked real well in your relationships? You're all laughing because you know it doesn't work. Why would you think it would work any different with your Creator? So you have to love him with what? With all your heart. So that's where your emotion and desire is. And with all your being, with all your strength. But you're going to have to think about what he actually wants to put all of that engine power behind. See, your strength and your desire is all of the fuel and the power behind what you do. But you can throw it all into the wrong thing. Well, we've all seen people, and I'm sure we all did this ourselves, we went off in full speed and went and all of a sudden realized, what did I just do? It was all in the wrong direction. I did the wrong thing, and I wasted all that time and all that energy because I didn't think it through first. Or I didn't read the directions all the way first. Or I didn't, whatever it was, right? But you just figured you knew, boom, and you hit it as hard as you could, only to have it totally go wrong because you didn't actually think it through first. So, this is the real key here. It is the first and greatest commandment is that we should understand getting our mind right and then applying all of that desire and strength behind it. That's really the key. Let's go to Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. Okay? I quote this verse often, but we'll start in verse 1. I often quote this verse 5 about letting the mind of Yeshua be in you, but let's kind of get the setup here. Verse 1, if then there is any encouragement in Messiah, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the nature of Elohim or the Spirit, if any affection and compassion, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, having the same love in one being and of purpose. Now let's make sure that we understand where it says, make my joy complete doesn't mean to do away with the joy. I know we've said this many times. What is he saying? Fill my joy to the fullest. Complete, bring my joy up to full completeness of joy. You want me to be, okay, I'm happy now, but I would be overflowing if you would do these things. It would bring me to the fullness of joy, to as much joy as I could possibly stand. It's not doing away with. Yeshua said, I didn't come to destroy, but to bring this Torah thing to show you its fullness when done completely, when filled to maximum capacity. So he says here, make my joy complete by being of the same mind. Paul was instructing, saying, I want you to all be of the same mind. Now, he didn't say my mind or pick an elder's mind or some other person's mind. Listen to what he tells us now so you know whose mind he wants you to be the same as. He says, doing none at all through selfishness or self-conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. This is a mindset and approach. Each one should look out not only for his own interest, but also the interests of others. Now, this is how you're going to do it. For let this mind be in you. Key word there is the three-letter word let. People are all worried about 4-letter words. I'd be more worried about this 3-letter word. 4-letter words can't hurt you. 3-letter word like let, that one could be a problem. You must let. He says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah Yeshua. So he wants you to receive and allow the mindset, the thinking processes, the approaches, the way that everything was viewed, that Messiah, the way he saw it, let that come into your head. Now, I wouldn't have to tell you to let something happen unless you also could not let it happen. You can stop it from happening. You can prevent it from happening. You can derail this whole process by blocking it from happening. Now, by the way, the phrase let also has sort of implied in it the desire for it to be there. In other words, the person who is speaking wants you to have it there. It's available. The only thing that's preventing it from being there is you're letting it or not. It's right there. It's not a rough thing or a hard thing. You have to just allow it to come in. Once your eyes have been opened and your ears have been opened, your heart's been opened, all you have to do now is let the mind come in you. How do you do that? You're going to have to shut yours off and get it out of the way. Because the fleshly mind, the I don't like, I don't want, I prefer, blah, 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 has to be shut down, buried to allow his mind to come in. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah Yeshua, who, now he's going to give you sort of the idea of how this looks, who being in the form of Elohim, did not regard equality with Elohim as a matter to be grasped. Okay, so he's not thinking of equality with the Father. By the way, this got me in so much trouble one time when I said that the Son and the Father weren't equal. Paul says it here. Yeshua himself says, my Father is greater than I. Anybody have a problem with what greater than means? Okay, remember when in Matthew had less than, greater than, and equal to? Okay? Everybody wants to think Father and Son equal to. No, he says Father is greater than, not equal to. Now, it doesn't mean they're not made of the same stuff, and both equally Elohim and above us, but there's still a hierarchy. All right? Okay, if you are part of my family last name is Berkson, and I am the head of that family, guess what? All the Berksons are still Berksons, but there's still a hierarchy. There's the head, there's the father, there's the mother, there's the children. There's an alignment, right? So it's not an equality necessarily, but we're all of the same stuff. Yeshua says here that my Father's greater, and here Paul says that Yeshua did not think of it as anything to be grasped, to be equal. But rather, listen, this is the key. This is you want to unlock everything? He emptied himself. Verse 7, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, and came to be in the likeness of men. For the vessel to be filled, it has to first be emptied. But a lot of us don't want to empty the vessel. You have to empty yourself so that you can be taking on the form of a servant, and came to be in the likeness of men. And having been found in a fashion as a man, he humbled himself. Did you catch that? He humbled himself. By the way, I think that you should have a little word of like FYI, little caution here. Humbling yourself is going to be a lot less painful than being humbled by him. I recommend humbling yourself, okay? Because Scripture makes it real clear that all will be humbled. Plan A, Plan B. Plan A, do it yourself. Plan B, not so fun. Okay, Plan A is not necessarily fun either. Plan B is a whole lot less fun. He humbled himself and became obedient unto death. This is the mind. Are you willing to empty yourself, humble yourself, take on the form of a servant, and be obedient unto death? Death even of a stake. Is that something you're willing to do? That, by the way, is the calling. See, we all paid attention to the I don't have to die and go into a fire or any of that stuff. Oh, sure, we get all excited about that. But to get there, you have to do this. It's going to take the right mind, which the right desires then attach to, and then the right actions come out of that lead to the destiny eventually called eternal life. Now, this is not a preaching of works, because you're not going to do any of this stuff unless you first accept that what Yeshua did made all this possible. You have to first understand that all of these works would mean nothing if Yeshua had not provided the way to salvation. And he made that possible at the stake when he overcame death and was resurrected, and then he did that for everyone that would ever exist. Everyone that existed prior, everyone that would exist forever. Once and for all. So now, having said that, our role in all of this is to what? Transform and conform into that image. How do you do that? This way, by letting this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah Yeshua, who being in the form of Elohim, did not regard equality with Elohim a matter to be grasped. By the way, every time that you sit on that throne, you think you're him. Why do you think you have a right to do that? Every time you take charge of your life and yourself and you start choosing what's right and wrong, now you're choosing to be equal or higher than Elohim himself. What did Yeshua say? He said, I don't say anything, I don't do anything that my Father hasn't told me to do. Completely submissive and obedient. That's the mindset. Now, why would he do all of these things? It says in verse 9, and Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name. You're looking for that exalting. You're looking to be resurrected. You're looking to be given the incorruptible. But that's only going to happen if you do this stuff. Empty yourself, humble yourself, and then be obedient unto death. Some of you are not obedient unto your boss, your wife, or your mother, whoever it is, going, boo. It says that he was obedient unto death, even death of the stake. And the reason it says even death of the stake is because that was the worst way to die at that time. It was the most humiliating, the most embarrassing, the most shameful way to die. It hurt a little bit too. And so he said he was even willing to do that. What are you willing to do to receive that name? Because it talks about in Revelation that to he who overcomes, he has a new name for you. Okay, I don't have that in my notes here. It wasn't my original notes, but you know that verse. To he who overcomes will receive a new name. What do you have to overcome? Self. You think you got to overcome Satan and everybody else? No, overcome you. You're the problem, not everybody else. You deal with you, everything will be just fine. You can't control Satan. You can't control everybody else. You can barely control you. So why don't you focus on the only one you have a shot at? Okay? Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. You got to empty yourself. Isaiah 55, verse 6. We're going to speed this up a little bit. Isaiah, Yeshayahu 55. And in verse 6, seek Yahweh while he is to be found. Call on him while he is near. That's a scary verse, because that means that there may be a time when he's not found. Let the wrong forsake his ways, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to Yahweh, who has compassion on him, and to our Elohim, for he pardons much. See, do you think that Paul was maybe talking about this a little bit in Philippians? Do you think this was going on a little bit in Ephesians? When he talks about in his compassion, what he said in his compassion he called us and he forgave us. Because let's understand, verse 8, he says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares Yahweh. But that's why you have to return to Yahweh's paths. You got to return to Yahweh's ways. Are you willing to do that, though? For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts, which means that you don't necessarily have to get it. You don't have to understand it to do it. Well, I don't understand. Well, he already told you that his thoughts are higher than yours, which means that you might not be able to understand. But you can still do it. There's nothing that he gave in an instruction that you can't understand enough how to do, when to do, where to do, how much to do. That part he gave you very clearly. The higher thought part is that you might not understand why. You know, in Exodus 19, I don't find that anywhere in Exodus 19, 5, 6, 7, where it talks about the actual covenant, where it says that he was explained to us why. It just said, you agree to do what I say. If you agree to do what I say, I will take you as my people, etc. And they agreed. He never said that you only have to do what I say if you understand it. Now, he does expect you to understand what to do, when to do it, where to do it, etc., how to do it. But he never said that he had to understand why. See, this is back to that child mentality. You know, we all have teenagers or been teenagers, we somehow experience teenagers where they all go, do this, and they go, well, why? Well, why do I have to do that? Why can't I do this? No, see, let's not be rebellious, know-it-all teenagers. Sorry about that, teenagers. Okay? Someday you'll figure out you don't know it all, and that'll be a good moment. But some of you still haven't figured it out, and you're not teenagers anymore. And that's really the problem. Okay? He said, let the wrong forsake his way. First, you got to figure out that you're wrong. Problem is, a lot of you still sitting on the throne, so you think you're right. And you haven't found anybody in your life that's able to correct you and tell you you're wrong. Well, I don't like being corrected. You know, in Deuteronomy, it says that no one likes correction, right? But it brings the peaceable fruit, doesn't it? But nobody likes to be disciplined. Okay? Oh, he does a lot of correcting in this book, though, doesn't he? And when he does, a lot of us sit there cheering him on until it happens to you. Well, I didn't like the way you said that. I don't know, did you read the way he says certain things in here? He doesn't say things all that nice either. Coddling and oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, I'm so sorry. Get over it and move on and go and get this right. I mean, enough is enough. Take the thumb out of your mouth and the diapers off and get on your big boy and big girl, whatever, and start walking this out as an adult. And stop waiting for someone to treat you just exactly the way you need to be treated, otherwise you're not doing it. Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24. See, a lot of people talk about discipleship. You know, I've had a few people come into discipleship, and I would say a good percentage of them lasted 5 minutes. Because as soon as it came to correction, out the door. Well, I didn't like the way he talked to me. I didn't like the way this, and what does that have to do with anything? Luke 24, verse 44. And it was now about am I in the right place? No, I'm in chapter 23. 24, 44. Sorry, I was in the wrong chapter. And he said to them, these are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you. Excuse me. That all have to be fulfilled, or all have to be filled that was written in the Torah of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. Now, first of all, notice what he said there. The same argument I make all the time about what he did. When he said it is done, what was he talking about? This. All that was said about me had to be done. Not all that what everybody else had to do. He said, but I came to do and fulfill everything that was written about me. Yeshua said he came to fulfill everything that was done by Torah and the prophets and the Psalms, etc., concerning me. Verse 45, then he opened their minds. They'd already been with him for a couple of years. He trained them personally, discipled them personally, and they still needed him to open their mind. But notice he's doing this after they've been through training. See, a lot of you want to skip the training and go right to him opening your mind. Now, he gives you eyes to see, ears to hear, heart to receive, but you go through a teacher, you go through instruction, you get to a point, and as that's going on, he opens your mind to understand what the scriptures had said. Okay? Let's continue. Let's go to 1 John 5. I'm going to get some momentum here. 1 John 5:20. And we know that the Son of Elohim has come and has given us an understanding so that we might know the true one, and we are in the true one if his Son Yeshua Messiah, in his Son Yeshua Messiah, this is the true Elohim and everlasting life. Now listen now. It says, we know that the Son of Elohim has come and has given us understanding. So, what if I told you about the Son of Elohim? Well, we know that's Yeshua, right? What do we know about Yeshua? That he is the truth, that he is the light, that he is the way, that he is life, that he is the Torah made flesh. So he said this here. He says that, listen, we know that the Torah, the Son of Elohim, Yeshua, the light, the truth, etc., has come and has given us understanding. So through all of that Messiah is, guess what you get? Understanding. But you have to embrace him in his fullness as truth, as Torah, as light, as life. Let's continue in Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Let's see, verse 1. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, which is your reasonable worship. It's not above and beyond. It's just reasonable. It is reasonable for your Elohim to expect you to do what? Present your bodies a living offering, set apart and well-pleasing to Elohim. By the way, you can't do the set apart and well-pleasing. Now listen to verse 2. Listen now. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove, listen now, so that you prove how? In a renewed mind is the only way you could do this. What is the good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim? Isn't that what we started off talking about earlier? That you're not going to please him, you're not going to love him with all your heart, strength, and mind if you don't know what pleases him. So here he's saying, look, don't be conformed to the world's way of doing it and transformed into the world's way of doing it, but be transformed by the renewing, the changing of your mind to a different mindset, his mindset. And how do you do that? You do that by trying to figure out and understand, by studying his word, what is actually well-pleasing to him. And this is reasonable. It's not an unreasonable thing for him to expect you to do this. He opened your eyes, your ears, and your heart for this purpose, so that you could do this. Does that make any sense to anyone? So it's reasonable that you renew your mind, not just fill it with information. We talk about knowing as being relational. Not being relational just makes it information. When you have information, a lot of us have heads full of information. But if we don't take that information to renew our minds and to then develop a relationship, then the information was nothing more than just facts, figures, times, dates, whatever. Information. Verse 3, for I say, through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as Elohim has given to each a measure of belief. Oh, a lot of us, we judge each other. Why? Because I'm smarter than you are, and I'm right and you're wrong, and I can't believe you're doing that. Why? Why do you think so highly of you? See, when you pick on somebody else, you're actually thinking more highly of yourself also. This is why we have the plank twig analogy. See, when you think more highly of yourself, all you see is the twig in the other person's eye. You forget about the plank in your own. Because you're thinking, they're wrong. Instead of thinking, I'm wrong too. We're in the same boat. Oh, but they're wrong. Well, so are you. Why don't you work on you? Why don't you let whoever's job it is to work on them? It's probably not yours. Okay? It's probably not your job. There are those whose job it is. Don't take that upon yourself. He says, I say to you, to everyone who's among you, not to think this way. Don't think of yourself more highly than you should. Verse 4, for as we have many members in one body, but all members do not have the same function, so we, the many, are one body in Messiah, and the members each one of another. And so let's make sure that we understand as we go through these things that we do not think more highly than we should. Everybody's got a role. Stay in your role. Don't try to wear a hat that doesn't fit your head. Okay, there's lots of different hats you could wear. How about starting off with the servant hat? We talked about that already. Humbling yourself, emptying yourself, and taking on the role of servant. Now, we can serve in many different ways. But some of you only think of servant as actively doing something for someone in this plane, in the human plane. How about serving him? How do you do that? By obedience. How about getting your life right in his eyes? That's a servant role. That's a servant role. Okay, now having different gifts, according to the favor which is given to us, let us use them accordingly. If prophecy, according to the portion of belief. If serving, in the serving. Or he who is teaching, in the teaching. Or he who encourages, in encouragement. Or he who is sharing in sincerity. He who is leading in diligence. And he who shows compassion joyously. Let love be without hypocrisy. Shrink from what is wicked. Cling to what is good. See, the hypocrisy is the problem. Okay, when you still have your mind ruling, although information-wise you have his information and they don't connect correctly, that's hypocrisy. Your actions are not going to match the right mind. Okay? They're not going to match the right mind. Colossians chapter 3. Some of you are like, wow, Rabbi only got to like 2 references the last 12 teachings. He's already on like the 3rd or 14th one here. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1. Told you we are going to finish this today. If then, Colossians 3:1, if then we are raised, you were raised with Messiah. Seek the matters which are above, where Messiah is, seated at the right hand of Elohim. Mind the matters above and not those on the earth. For you have died, and your life has been hidden with Messiah and Elohim. Okay, so what's going on here? If you were raised with Messiah, and I'm going to use that word raised here like the idea of being raised from the dead. You were dead in your trespasses, and then you were raised out of that into Messiah. If you were raised with Messiah, what is Messiah? The Torah, the truth, the light, the life, the way. So if you were raised with all that, seek the matters above. What are the matters above? You have a whole book full of them right here. What the ones that are above want you to be doing. Those that are in charge, Father and Son, have given you a book, a manual, to help you understand what's the matters of above. But we get so stuck on our fleshly matters. He says, knock that off. He says, mind the matters above, not those on the earth. But we worry about things and we focus on things, all the wrong things. Now, I want you, I'm not going to get to do it today, but I want you to consider following this all the way through to verse 17, okay? Okay, this we continue in your study. I'm not going to go through it today because I want to wrap this up in the next 20 minutes or so. So I want you to go ahead and continue reading this all the way to 17 so that you get all of that idea worked out of what he's talking about here, about the matters above. Yeah, maybe I'll read it real quick. I'm looking at it now and it's just kind of grabbing me here. So where did I leave off? Verse 4, when the Messiah who is our life is manifested, then you also shall be manifested with him in esteem. Therefore, put to death your members which are on earth, whoring, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, greed of gain, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of Elohim is coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you also once walked when you lived in them. Back to what? Ephesians chapter 2. But now also put off all these: displeasure, wrath, evil, blasphemy, filthy talk from your mouth. Do not lie to each other, since you have put off the old man with his practices, and have put on the new one, who is renewed in knowledge according to the likeness of him who created him. Do you see everything I just said is right there? Everything I had said previous to that, he says, look, put off that old man, bury him, put him down, get rid, that's it, put it to death, put on the new. He says, put on the new. He says, look, when you do that, he says, the new one who is renewed in the relationship according to the likeness, not just information, the knowledge, the relationship according to the likeness of him who created him. So you're putting on what? The mind of Messiah is coming in you, and you're transforming and conforming into his image. Where there's no Greek or Yehudite, circumcised or uncircumcised, foreigner or Scythian, slave free, etc. In other words, he's saying, what you were before matters not. You're now a Messianic, Torah observant Israelite. Okay, that's what matters. It doesn't matter if you were male or female. It doesn't matter what your birthright was. There's no class system here, is what he's talking about. Therefore, as chosen ones of Elohim, set apart and beloved, put on compassion, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other. If anyone has a complaint against another, indeed, as Messiah forgave you, so also should you. Do we see in the body all kinds of problems here? Yes. Do we see that they're not bearing one another? Or do we see the forgiveness? Do we see complaints? We see problems. But above all, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. Let the peace of Elohim rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be filled with gratefulness, thanks and gratefulness. Now, here we're going to get to the key two words, the two verses here. Let the word of Messiah. Now, it's not just giving you an ambiguous thing about the Spirit or this or that. The word. What is the word of Messiah? The Torah. Let the word of Messiah dwell in you richly, teaching you and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing with pleasure in your hearts to the Master in psalms, etc. Let the word of Messiah dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in wisdom. Now remember, not everybody's teaching. Those whose roles are to teach. He already covered that previously. Okay, we covered that in Romans. So here, he's giving us a different idea. He says, look, everybody has to stay in their lane, but when we're doing this, whether you're teaching or admonishing, you're doing it in wisdom. What wisdom? The wisdom of the word. By the way, the word also tells you who should be doing it and who shouldn't be doing it. He says, but let that word dwell in you richly. In verse 17, and whatever you do, in word or deed, do it all in the authority of the Master Yeshua, giving thanks to Elohim the Father through him. Okay? Let's continue now in 2 Corinthians 10. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 3. For though we walk in flesh, we do not fight according to the flesh, for the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but mighty in Elohim, for overthrowing strongholds, overthrowing reasonings and every high matter that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim, taking captive every thought to make it obedient to the Messiah, and being ready to punish all disobedience when obedience is complete. All right, so what's going on here? Let's not read this as Christians with all that ooey-gooey, stronghold, spiritual battle stuff. The key here is that what? We're dealing with reasonings. That's the whole point here. It says, look, though we walk in a place called the world, we're fleshly beings still. He says, we do not fight according to the flesh. We don't use the flesh's tools. We're not going to use our own reasonings to do our fighting. Are we making sense here? He says, the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but mighty in Elohim for overcoming strongholds, overcoming reasonings. And what are the weapons that we use? You get yourself in the Word, you use the Word, and that's your weapons. What's your weapons? Letting the mind of Yeshua dwell in you, and when you think like him, you know exactly what to do. See, we're trying to use our fleshly strength, fleshly mind, fleshly reasonings to fight a spiritual battle, an Elohim nature battle with our fleshly nature. Stop trying to figure it out yourself. Get someone to help guide you to what the Word says is the way that He would want you to handle it, the way He handles things. Because we need to overthrow these reasonings. It didn't say anywhere that you're being possessed by spirits here. You've got wrong thought processes that come out of the fleshly nature. You need to overthrow those reasonings and every high matter that exalts itself against the relationship you have with Elohim by how? Taking captive every thought and making it obedient to Messiah. That you don't need to go to a deliverance ministry. Just do that. Take your thoughts and make them obedient. You don't have to go expose every wrong thing you ever did in front of a bunch of people you hardly know, or whatever else they make you do. Here it is. The weapons that you need are not fleshly, they're from Elohim, and you know what they are? They're the Word, and it's consistent with everything else that we talked about so far. So we have to take captive every thought. Why? Because if you don't take that thought captive, emotions will attach to it, and it's going to manifest in an action. Actions turn to habits, habits lead to destinies. Right? We've said this over and over and over and over and over again. Let's go now to Galatians 6. Okay, Galatians chapter 6, and in verse 1. Brothers, if a man is overtaken in some trespass, you, the spiritual one, set such a one straight in spirit of meekness, looking at yourself, lest you be tried too. Notice what it says here. If you're going to set him straight, check yourself out first. Look at yourself. Look at yourself. Okay? Bear one another's burdens and so complete the Torah of Messiah. For if anyone thinks himself to be somebody when he is not, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he shall have boasting in himself alone and not in another. Let each one examine his own work. Now, it did start off with this verse about setting someone straight, but then it completely reverses itself and says, but you know what? Before you're ready to do that, you got some other things to do first. You're going to have to examine your own works. And then you shall have a boasting in himself and not in another. For each one shall bear his own burden. But he just said, wait a minute, bear another's burdens. Well, you got to bear your own burden first. I got a lot of people come to the ministry and they just will not bear any of their own burden at all. They just want to find somebody, anybody to bear it for them. Come to us when you find the burdens you're carrying unbearable. But try to bear them. Do something on your part. We're here to help you bear the ones you can't. And let him who is instructed in the word share in all that is good with him who is instructing. Do not be led astray. Elohim is not mocked, for whatever a man does, whatever he sows, that he also shall reap. Because he who sows to his own flesh shall reap corruption from the flesh. But he who sows to the Spirit shall reap everlasting life from the Spirit. Let's change those words as we learn them. For he who sows to his own nature, the fleshly nature, shall reap corruption, because the fleshly nature is corrupt. But he who sows to the nature of Elohim shall reap everlasting life, because that is the nature of Elohim. Let's not ooey-gooey this into some spirit realm thing. It's not about that here. Your sowing is based on mind. You put the mind of Elohim in. You do the actions of Elohim out. Guess what you reap? Everlasting life. That's his nature. And let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not grow weary doing good. Good is something you do, not something that you get declared because of something Yeshua did. Okay, something you do. So then when we have occasion, let us do good to all, especially to those in the household of belief. But make sure that you are actually found doing good. Very important. 1 Peter chapter 1. First Kepha, 1 Peter 1, and verse 13. 1 Peter 1, verse 13. Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, there's a picture for you, right? Imagine taking like a cloth and like you would gird your loins with and girding your mind and wrapping it around your mind. Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor. By the way, we keep reading perfectly a couple of places. What have I taught you is probably a better translation? To do it with fullness of integrity. So gird up your loins of your mind, being sober. Set your expectation with fullness of integrity upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. Now, in this girded loins mind place where you're sober, he says, as obedient children. Now, do you think that there's a connection he's trying to make, that in order to be obedient children, you have to gird up the loins of your mind? So you got to have to get a hold of that thing that's between your ears. He says, then be sober about it. See, a lot of us are drunk, and I don't mean with wine, but we're drunk with emotion. We desire. I don't like. Oh, I love. I want. I don't want. We are not sober. We are drunk with emotion. We are blinded, like a drunk person gets, by alcohol with emotion. He says, but gird up your mind and be sober. What does sober mean? To think clearly, awake, aware, fully conscious, with all your faculties. Be sober. Setting your expectation perfectly with full integrity upon the favor that is to be brought to you as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. See, here they are, they've been instructed, they've been guided, they've come out of her, my people, to some degree, and guess what they do? They start acting exactly like they used to with a new, fancier clothes on top of the old body. So they dressed it a little different, but underneath, it's still dead man's bones. It's like making it a whitened sepulcher, as they say. Oh, you make it all look pretty on the outside. He says somehow these people are still not obedient, but they're conforming themselves to the former lusts in their ignorance. So you come into the Messianic Torah observant Israel place, and you still act like a Baptist, or a Pentecostal, or a Lutheran, or a Catholic, or an atheist, or whatever you were. And so you try to find ways to mold it into that image, or guess what? You go find a congregation that is Messacostal, a Messabaptist, a Messalutheran, or whatever it is. And they don't understand in their ignorance that they're conforming to their former preferences. That's what lust is, former desires. I like that other stuff. This Hebrew stuff and it's all Jewish looking stuff. Your Messiah is Jewish. Do you feel that way about him? I love my Messiah. Your Messiah the Jew, right? Be careful. But as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lust in your ignorance, instead, as the one who called you is set apart, so you also should become set apart in all behavior. See, I'm always accused of, oh, that guy, all he does is works. I'm reading it. The book is just saying works. I'm only reading it to you. I didn't make Kepha say behavior there. Be set apart in all your spirit. No. It says behavior. Because it has been written, be set apart, for I am set apart. So I guess our Elohim is set apart in his behavior. And the things he does. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's spirit, no? Each one's altar call, each one's claim that they know Messiah, each one's what? Work. If you call on the Father, who without partiality judges each one according to his work, what he does, past the time of your sojourning in fear. Now we go back to the fear of Yahweh teaching. The beginning of wisdom, the beginning of understanding, the beginning of knowledge starts with a proper level of fear. awe, reverence, and respect that you're afraid to disappoint. I don't want him looking down at me with his head down, just shaking his head going, I can't believe you just did that. Why would you do that? Are you afraid to have that moment? Knowing that you were redeemed from your feudal way of life, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless. Okay, you were redeemed from your feudal way. What makes you think now that you're redeemed that your feudal way is any less feudal if you still want to go your way? If it was feudal before, why isn't it futile now? But you were redeemed from your feudal way. So this is where, again, Christianity drops the ball. You're redeemed from your feudal way, but now, because the law is done away with, now you can go continue to do your feudal way, but now it works. It was feudal before. But now it's not feudal anymore. It's ridiculous. Knowing that you were redeemed, okay, but not with gold and silver, but with the precious blood of Messiah, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes. So this was even before the foundation of the world. So that's why I say that when he died and was resurrected, it changed everything, or did what had to be done for everybody before or after, because really this was done from the foundation of the world. Amen. Who through him, this is for us now, for through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. Stop relying on yourself. Rely on him, and then you make the choices to do what he said. Stop relying on him to do it for you, but rely on him to tell you what to do. Stop relying on him to do it for you, but rely on him to guide you, inspire you, and lead you. If you would only get off the throne and let him rule in your life. Let's see. 1 Timothy 6. I think I could squeeze this in here and just be almost done. 1 Timothy 6. Verse 1. Let those who are servants under a yoke regard their own masters worthy of all respect, lest the name of Elohim and his teaching be blasphemed. And those who have believing masters, let them not disregard them because they are brothers, but rather serve them because they are believing and beloved ones, those receiving of the good service in return. Teach and urge these matters. Okay, let's stop for a second. He is not talking about slaves. He's talking about the word yoke. And what does the word yoke give you? It should evoke or bring to mind that we're talking about discipleship. When we're talking about yoking together, it's a discipleship buzzword. So it's like the alert button should go up. Oh, this is a discipleship point. He said, let those who are in discipleship, under a discipler, under a yoke, regard their discipler worthy of all respect, lest the name of Elohim and his teaching be blasphemed, because Elohim teaches that that's the model. Are we making sense here? He's not talking about a physical slave working for anybody. How do I know that? Watch how this plays through. And those who have believing masters, in other words, you have believing teachers that you've yoked yourself to, let them not disregard them because they are brothers, but rather serve them because they are believing and beloved ones, those receiving of the good service in return. Teach and urge these matters. Now, in case we're not clear what's going on, verse 3 says, if anyone teaches differently and does not agree to sound words, those of our Master Yeshua Messiah, and to the teaching which is according to reverence, he is puffed up, understanding none at all, but is sick under questionings and verbal battles from which come envy, strife, slander, wicked suspicions, worthless disputes of men of corrupt minds, deprived of truth, who think that reverence is a means of gain, withdraw from them. So reverence means, so this is definitely talking about ministry. Any doubt here? Okay? So he's saying here, look, let those who are under discipleship, under a yoke, regard your disciplers worthy of all respect. Otherwise, why are you discipling with that person? Look, this is not a cult. We're not having disciplers running around forcing people into discipleship. It's a voluntary relationship. You find somebody you feel is worthy of all respect and who has a yoke you're willing to take on you. That yoke, by the way, is to teach you, lead you, guide you in the transformation process to become like Yeshua. He says, however, anybody teaches differently and doesn't agree to sound words, those of our Master Yeshua, and then the teaching which is according to reverence, he's puffed up. Don't be all puffed up. See, over and over again out there, they're teaching against discipleship. They're teaching against there being authority from a human being in line with the Creator, and that's a process that was, Yeshua used it, and he told them, go out, Matthew 28, go out and make disciples. How do you make a disciple? Well, you start off being one, and under a discipler who makes you one. And then you go out and repeat the process. But look what's happening. He says, because if this puffed up person is going in a whole wrong way, guess what happens? They end up, listen, they think, and they end up with a corrupt mind. Okay, worthless abuse of men of corrupt minds and deprived of truth, who think that the reverence that's going on is a means of gain. So in other words, they're only doing this for filthy lucre. They're only doing this to gain. This is also when he says, woe to you, you guys out there who want to be seen in the public, and you're doing this to be seen by men, right? Matthew 23, and you're doing all these things. And some of you are thinking, oh yeah, well I know about that one, and so why do you call yourself rabbi? Go listen to the teaching I did call nobody rabbi. It's a little in focus thing. It came out of Get Out the Leaven, one of the parts or something, okay? But what the point was in Matthew 23 was, don't be doing these things to be praised by men. So look, that's a wrong mindset. It's a corrupt mindset. You got to be careful that we don't end up in that place. Let's continue and we're going to finish here in Ephesians 4. Wow, we're actually going to wrap this up. Look at this. Ephesians chapter 4, and that's where we're going to end this whole series. Verse 17. So this I say and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the world, as Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind, having been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from the life of Elohim because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart, who having become callous and having given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with greediness. But you have not so learned Messiah. So what is he saying here? He says, look, the Gentiles are not just those because, okay, it's not their fault. They haven't had their eyes open, their ears open, etc. Some of them have chosen to ignore all that because I'm not getting off the throne. And so if I'm not going to get off the throne, I'm not going to be able to walk this out right. I'm going to be futile. It's going to be the futility of my mind. By the way, the idea of walking futility and the futility of your mind, meaning what does it mean when you feel like you're doing something that's futile? You're making the effort and nothing's happening, right? Nothing's getting accomplished. What you're trying to accomplish just isn't happening. Remember, this is not just those who are Gentiles who are walking and they're happy as can be just walking and living life. These are those who are thinking that they're doing it right and nothing seems to go right. They're trying to do it right, but they're doing it on their own strength, their own mind, their own power. Okay, not the beginning of all this when it said, and you shall love Yahweh with all of your mind, heart, power. They're doing it with their own mind, heart, and power. This is futile. It's futility. How? They've been darkened in their understanding because they've been estranged from the life of Elohim because of the ignorance that is in them. So he's saying that these are people that are ignorant, but they're ignorant by choice. Just because he gave them an understanding, and by the way, I can only believe that these are those that he gave some understanding because they would not come under authority. They would not be instructed by him through those that he chooses to instruct them because they've become callous. How do you become callous? Well, he treated me mean, and so I'm not going to listen to him anymore. Or he didn't say hello to me. We had a person leave our congregation and never come back because I forgot to say hi to them one week. I did not make this up. Okay, somehow I missed them. Some of you came in this morning and probably not happy with me because I was dealing with 16 technical emergencies and I did not have time for you this morning. And I looked at you like, not now. I'm sorry. At that moment, I couldn't have done any different. That doesn't excuse anything, but I was focused on something that needed my full attention, and I just needed you to know. Could I have said it nicer? Not where I was in that moment. I'm not mature enough to get there yet. So no, I wasn't capable of that. That's part of my growing. But some of you are going to take that moment and let it be a stumbling block. Don't do that. You've been where I was. You know what that feels like. And you know what it's like if someone comes up to you in a moment when everything is not going right and you don't know how to fix it and you don't have the people available to fix it or whatever it was. And that's not to pick on those who were in that situation with me. I'm telling you about me at this point. All right? But don't let it be a problem. Don't let it be a stumbling block. Don't let it be a cause for stumbling. Where am I now? Okay, but you have not so learned the Torah, Messiah, the truth, the light. You've not learned it that way. If indeed, now by the way, he says, but you've not so learned, it hints here that they learned. It's not those who were never called, those who never had an opportunity. I can't believe that verse 17 is talking about those people, because it says, because you've not learned that. They had their opportunity and chose to learn it differently. He said, but you've not so learned that. You learn Messiah differently. You come to understand the truth, the light, the Torah, the Messiah differently than they have. If indeed you have heard him and were taught by him as truth is in Yeshua, then you need to put off, with regard to your former way of life, the old man, being corrupt according to the desires of deceit, and to be renewed in the nature of your mind. You have to change the nature of your mind, the spirit of your mind, to his nature. And that you put on the renewed man, which was created according to Elohim, in righteousness and set apartness of truth. Therefore, having put off the false, speak truth, each one with his neighbor, for we are members of one another, etc. Listen to what's going on here. By the way, you know, I have all these Christian ministries out there like going, we're this renewed man ministry or that one new man ministry. What new man are you talking about? Oh, because I've met these guys. I've been invited to their conferences. Oh, you know, the one new man. What one? The one new man is a fully integrated, back into the olive tree Israelite. Okay? Renewed in the mind to the spirit of Elohim, the nature of Elohim in your mind. Dying to flesh, burying the old man, now you're a renewed man. The one new man is the coming back together of the whole two sticks, all the house together into one stick. It's not some new creation. I mean, I talk to these people like, oh no, he created this brand new thing. No, he's trying to bring back a fractured thing back to one. Okay, he's restoring that which was broken into one, into wholeness. Oh, but we got all of this, whole ministries built on this. Look, it's the futility of their own mind. They came up with this stuff in their own power and their own strength, and they're running with it. It's not in the book anywhere. But they're running with it. And what's worse is I get people all the time getting excited about it and contacting me. And this is the part I love. They want to share teachings with me to get my understanding of some other person's teaching. How do I know what they were trying to say? Go ask them what they meant, if you can get them on the phone. I don't, you know. I don't know what to say anymore. Okay? We've got to stop walking in the futility of our human fleshly minds. Okay? What are you thinking? Well, I'm thinking I need to start thinking like him is what I should be thinking. I'm thinking it's enough of my own thinking. See, some of you are laughing because you can see the exasperation and exhaustion on my face. How do you think he feels looking at all of us? Like, when are you going to stop this nonsense? You suffer needlessly because you will not submit. We are stiff-necked. What does that mean? Take it from the other wording, not submitting. Stiff-necked, I will not bend my neck. You're not going to bow down to me? Nope, that neck is not bending for anybody. That's what stiff neck talks about. Submission. Oh, but we won't submit. No. One of the verses we were reading led right into the section that talks about husbands and wives. Okay, I think that was in Peter. If we kept going, it goes right from that whole girding up the loins of your mind, everything else, right into wives and husbands. Why? Because it's that same kind of relationship. But we're a thinking mess. But we're finished with the teaching. Father, we come before you. And Father, we are going to spend more time focused on what we are thinking. I pray that everyone is going to give a lot more attention to what and how they're thinking. Whose mind are you relying on? Your own mind? Are you in the strength of your own mind? Are you in the futility of your own mind? Are you taking upon yourself the mind of Yeshua? Father, that's my prayer, that we would all decide to truly bury the old man, to humble ourselves, to empty ourselves, so that we can be filled with the mind of Yeshua, that we can be filled with his thoughts, his approaches, his reasonings, so we can think as he thought. And by the way, we know that his thoughts weren't even his thoughts. They were your thoughts. So can we follow his example on how to actually have our heads filled with your thoughts, your ways, your reasonings, Father? Help us to truly embrace that this experiment of doing it my way has failed. The doing it our own way experiment should be over, and we should have a very easy conclusion that it did not work. Hopefully we can finally get that worked out and start thinking as you would have us to think. Father, we thank you for your book. We thank you for your word. We thank you for this teaching. And we ask that it would not go away empty and void, but it would bear the fruit of changing our minds so that we can change our hearts, so we can change our actions, change our habits, and ultimately end up in the destiny called eternal life, where we could spend forever with you. Father, we thank you, praise you, and ask this with all of our hearts, with all of our minds, with all our strengths. In the name and authority of Yeshua, our Messiah, amen, amen.